Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House did approve that we do adjourn the House for purposes of discussing this definite matter of urgent national importance regarding these ongoing demolitions and evictions in Athi River, Machakos County. Mr. Speaker, since Friday the 13th, which I would refer to as a dark Friday of October, up to date, the worst case of demolitions in the history of this country has been taking place in the county of Machakos, in the constituencies of Mavoko, in an area of Athi River. Mr. Speaker, first my sympathies go to those almost 10,000 families that have lost their livelihoods, their homes, their abodes. Mr. Speaker, 5 churches were brought down, and Mr. Speaker, there are 33 churches on notice to also be brought down. Mr. Speaker, mosques, business premises, including 3 schools and a health facility, have also been brought down. Mr. Speaker, my sympathies notably go to one Mr. Madenge, Mr. Speaker, who is a hustler that took a loan to purchase land and went to the point of trying to confirm whether this land was actually legitimate. And that is only done when you go to the registry of lands and confirmed that the people that were purporting to sell the land to him were actually the genuine landowners. And he invested his money and took a loan. And Mr. Speaker, went to an architect and a civil engineer, got structural, architectural drawings and structural drawings. And Mr. Speaker also sought the approval of the county government for construction of his house. Mr. Speaker, all this was granted. And Mr. Speaker, on the basis of that, he took a loan and built a house. Mr. Speaker, it is not even 10 years since this house was built. It has been brought down. What remains is rubble. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that Mr. Madenge still continues now, every month from his salary, to pay a housing levy. Mr. Speaker, it is a tragedy. My sympathies go to those families where their houses were brought down on that first night. And so children woke up the next day, they had no school to go to. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, because also families had nowhere to live because this destruction started in the evening. And by morning, Mr. Speaker, people were thrown out. Children spent the night out in the cold. Mothers with small children were out in the cold. Fathers had no answers for their families. Mr. Speaker, it is a major tragedy. Mr. Speaker, I want to condemn in the strongest terms possible those that gave the instructions for the demolition to take place. It is so unfortunate 60 years after independence that people can be hoodwinked, buy land and process titles, get connected to the national grid of electricity, road networks are put up, water is supplied in that area by the county government, and then suddenly all this comes down. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to condemn the police that was sent there in huge numbers. Mr. Speaker, it was so unfortunate because I went there as a local leader to go condole with these families and to see how we could help the children that spend the night out in the cold, whether we would provide them with blankets, whether we would buy for them a cup of tea. Mr. Speaker, we were chased like dogs, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the history of this land, this is ancestral land. It is our heritage, the heritage of the people of Machakos. And Mr. Speaker, the land was given to the East African Portland Cement. They did not purchase it. The reason that East African Portland Cement was given this land was simply because that area was rich in minerals that are used in the production of cement. So they were given this land for purposes of mining so that they could be able to process cement, and that was the main business of East African Portland Cement. Mr. Speaker, it is notable that the East African Portland Cement has run into billions of debt as a result of the poor management of the business itself, a business that was once a monopoly of production of cement in this country. And therefore, in order to cover their losses, in order to cover their poor business practices, now East African Portland purports to want to sell the land that belongs to the community of Machakos County. Mr. Speaker, I think that is something we cannot take for granted. Mr. Speaker, it is also good to note that when these evictions were done, there was no eviction order that was given by the court. Mr. Speaker, the case that was taken to court was thrown out on technicality. And the only thing that the judge finally said was that we need to set a date of hearing so that a discussion could take place, so that the case would be heard. The case was never heard. And then, so therefore, after it was thrown out on technicality, bulldozers, the sound of bulldozers, the sound of wailing women and children is what we could hear from that place. So, Mr. Speaker, it is quite an irony that 60 years after independence, people can be thrown out in that manner. Mr. Speaker, it's also notable that Clause 155 of the Land Act does indicate that in order for anyone to be evicted, there must be two things. One, a court order, so that we can be sure that the court process has taken place. And two, Mr. Speaker, a notice of 60 days. You notice that recently when there was a ruling about the land that was owned by Gerishon Kirima, the late honorable member, they have given the occupants 60 days, and they have also opened up an opportunity for discussions. Mr. Speaker, that was not the case in Mavoko. That was not the case in our region. And Mr. Speaker, it's also good to note that it is on record that there are other areas where there are issues of land disputes, and evictions were to take place. And none other than the Deputy President himself, Mr. Speaker, said that he will not allow the evictions to take place in Okalau. Are the people of Mavoko any less than the ones in Okalau? Or is it true that there are people that are shareholders and that those that are not? Mr. Speaker, on the inauguration of this government of Kenya Kwanza, there was very clear information given to us that from now, Kenyans are now safe, and no one will have their house brought down as a result of a land dispute. It is shocking, Mr. Speaker, that the worst case, the worst ever case from the history of this country, of demolitions of people who are innocent, has happened only 11 months after this team of leadership of Kenya Kwanza was sworn into office. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead that we look at it from this perspective. There may be people that were capable, Mr. Speaker, and that is why DCI is getting involved, ESCC is getting involved. We know there were letters that were being thrown out from long time ago for people to be investigated. But, Mr. Speaker, those people whose houses have come down are not guilty of any crime other than purchasing land and putting up a house. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that this is happening to our people, and I want to ask that the government do what they said on the time of inauguration. Let them take care of these Kenyan hustlers. Let them make sure that those people whose houses were brought down are supported by being compensated, Mr. Speaker. Let them be compensated. Let them not have worked so hard to put up an abode for their families. And that all goes to waste, Mr. Speaker, at a split of a second. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say that it was also unfortunate and shocking when we saw that East African Portland Cement, after bringing down almost 10,000 homes, were now purporting to want to sell the land to the people that were occupying that land. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate. It is shocking. It is something that this House must condemn in the strongest terms possible, and it is something that we must say should never again happen in the history of this country. It is a shame on us, even as leaders, for this country, many years after independence, for this kind of situation to take place. And we as leaders must stand up to be counted. We must defend the rights of the people. We must represent the people. We must legislate on their behalf, Mr. Speaker. And I think we have enough laws. All that matters now is for us to represent them and say enough is enough. And no further demolitions of innocent Kenyans' homes will take place in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The leader of the minority party in Parliament.